Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by my co-host Nick Filato. Today we're here to break down the Giants' schedule. The schedule was released yesterday. We were recording this on Thursday, and we finally found out when the Giants are playing and where the Giants are playing. Well, we knew where they were playing, but when they're playing. The Giants, despite a down season, Nick, have a lot of primetime games again, which, I know a lot of fans don't like that, especially the fans who go to the games, which I respect and I understand. For me, selfishly, I do actually like having like a Thursday game on Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is a different one, but I actually enjoy it because my whole family watches the Giants. So we watch together, and that's the only time we can do that. But I like the Thursday night games, the Sunday nights, the Monday nights, because that means I get to watch Red Zone during the 1 p.m. I'll take a 4 over anything. The 4 is to me ideal, the 4 o'clock, because there's not much going on in the NFL at 4. You're like one of 3 games, but I don't love the ones because then I don't get to really get a feel for what's going on. So I'm not complaining about the primetime games. I understand why others are. And the Giants' record in primetime hasn't been great in recent years, so that I get as well. But I just wanted to get, before we get into the schedule analysis, I want to get your thoughts on the jersey reveals, the 100th anniversary Giants jersey reveals. What are your thoughts on that, Nick? You're big on you have aesthetic. You understand jersey and stuff like that.
I do. Thank you for that, Dan. So I've been listening to this podcast for a little while, understand that I am a huge fan of the old school red jerseys. And by old school, I mean the 2004 to 2007, 2008 red jerseys. These jerseys they just released, they're not those red jerseys. I'm not a huge fan of them. Look, the tan pants, if you want to do the tan pant thing, I'm not going to throw an absolute fit over that, but I'm not a huge fan of this look, this old school look. I'm not going to sit here and, burn anything over it and get all pissed off, but I kind of think it's a little ugly.
Do we know yet what game they're going to be wearing that in?
No.
Or is that not revealed yet? I assume it's like
I don't know if others do.
What'd you say, Nick? Sorry, say that again.
I don't know. I don't know if others do.
Yeah, maybe others do. I would assume it might be that Thursday game on Prime against the Cowboys, week 4.
Makes sense.
Possibly. In which case they would force the Cowboys. Oh no, then the Cowboys get to wear their white, which they don't, which the Giants, I think, sometimes would like to go the opposite route, forcing the Cowboys to wear their dark color, which they for some reason hate to do. But maybe they'll wear it for that game. Maybe they'll wear it for the Sunday night game against the Bengals. I'm assuming it's going to be for a primetime game. Maybe it's for the Germany game. I feel like that's possible. No,
it's got to be one of the Thursday games, I would imagine.
Okay. It's one.
Honestly, you wore it for the Germany game. I think that's just bad branding. You
want
to show your.
It cannot be during the Germany game. You have to wear your blues during the Germany game for sure. Is that considered a home game? Do we lose a home game?
It is a home game.
Yeah, that stinks. But yeah, as far as the uniforms go, Nick. Look, I'm not as big. I kind of just interested to see them play in different uniforms. Like I love the Color Rush uniforms. I like the throwback reds when they were used occasionally. Gold pants, whatever. I'm curious.
It's not a home game, actually. I lied.
Oh, the Germany, nice. We wasted a road game there. That's nice. That's very nice, actually. Little short edition, small edition. But yeah, I feel like it makes the Giants kind of look like a rugby team, Nick. Which quite frankly, they might be like a rugby team this year. They don't really throw the in. No, I'm just kidding. The 2022 version was kind of like a rugby football team. A lot of bootlegs, a lot of runs with the quarterback. Remember that Bears game where we attempted like 13 passes? So there was some rugbies. We got to get the laterals going. Maybe the game we use these jerseys, we can try to do. Look, I think what Travis Kelce and Kadarius Toney did last year could be revolutionary, even though Tony's idiotically lined up off sides before the snap. I think more teams should be using in-play lateral designs. Hopefully the Giants can bring one out for one of these games with their with their rugby uniform. But no, all jokes aside, I'm fine with the uniforms. This doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't move the needle. I know it's a big thing on Giants Twitter. I see a lot of people tweeting about it and talking about it. I just quite frankly don't care. I just want them to be a good football team. Whatever jersey they're wearing for playing good football, that's the one I want them to wear, Nick.
I should get a picture up right now and bring it up. I just found one.
No, you can't get a picture up and put it on the computer. You can only drink out of a pitcher.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's my my lack of enunciation skills. It's a pitcher. They're all the same for me. And you're 100% right. Like
picture.
The guy who stands on the mound, he's a pitcher, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that you have on your nightstand of your girlfriend or your family or your loved ones, that's a picture too.
It's a picture.
I never pronounce that C. That's
I don't know how you missed the C, but it's all right. We'll let it go.
Thanks, bro.
But yeah, so I'm not as worried about the jerseys, Nick. Let's take a look at the actual schedule, though. The schedule is very interesting. it's set up, and my initial reaction to it, Nick, is it's set up in a way where the Giants really have to get off to a hot start because the back end of the schedule after the bye is really when it gets aggressively more difficult. And this is kind of backed up by what I like to go by, Nick, which is the Vegas win totals. Because here, look, you can look at strength of schedule based on last year and say, oh, the Giants have the blank strength of schedule. But why do I give a crap about last year's records? They mean nothing toward this year. What means something more, though is not perfect, is what Vegas is projecting, because Vegas is very, very good at this thing. They understand how to project wins and losses. They're good. They're the best at it. And in weeks 1 through 10, according to Sharp Football, this is based on the projected forecasted Vegas win totals. The Giants actually have the 8th easiest schedule through the first 10 weeks of the season. Obviously, things take a massive turn after that, after those first 10 weeks of the season, I should say. But through those first 10 weeks, let's start with that, because I feel like we'll break that down through those 10 games and then get to the post-bye. So let's start with the first game of the season, Nick. And that's going to be at home against the Vikings. I feel like if you're going to get the Vikings at any time this year, this is probably the best time to get them, right? They have potentially JJ McCarthy starting this game. Not sure. It could be Sam Darnold. Either way, I feel like the Giants have and will have success against a quarterback like Sam Darnold, especially with a new defense coming in. You want to kind of give them a bit of a, like, I don't want to say break, but a bit of a easier start to the season. And I would suggest that the Vikings could be that at home. I like that for the Giants as well. Vikings defense. Here's the thing. Personnel wise, Nick, I'm not so concerned about them, but schematically, Brian Flores against Daniel Jones, that's where I do get a little bit of concerned, especially with a brand new offensive line revamped coming in, potentially only 3 starters back for the Giants, maybe 2 if Neal doesn't win the job in camp. So that's where it starts for me. I feel like the first game sets up as one of those potential 13-10 type of games that hopefully the Giants can win.
I'm not sure. It could be that, right? Like, I hope the Giants have something built into that game plan where they could take advantage of Brian Flores' uber aggressive approach when they're just trying to bring blitz after blitz after blitz. Now you have Malik Neighbors. Now you have somebody who can really win on one-on-one. If you want to put Byron Murphy, who's a really good cornerback for the Vikings, used to be on the Arizona Cardinals, former Washington Husky, out there one-on-one on Malik Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors, even right now, not even playing an NFL snap, is talented enough to win that one-on-one matchup. If they want to roll coverage over the top of Malik Neighbors, use your other weapons. It's going to come down to the quarterback. We have no idea who's even starting quarterback for the New York Giants that game. We think it's going to be Daniel Jones, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's Drew Lock. We don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings, like you said before. Could be Sam Darnold, could be JJ McCarthy, but I agree with you. If I want to play, the Giants have to play the Minnesota Vikings, a team. I respect their coach. I respect their offensive weapons. I would like it to be week 1, just to, especially with the rookie quarterback dynamic going on there.
Also, just with the fact that TJ Hawkinson is not going to be playing in this game, and Hawkinson will probably be back more toward the midseason for the Vikings, maybe early part. People recover faster from ACLs these days, but even if he comes back week 5, week 6, the Giants are skipping that as well. Really difficult matchup that they can avoid there. And they, in the playoff game, they had Xavier McKinney lock down Hawkinson on some key plays. They don't have a Xavier McKinney at this point they could to utilize in that role. And we're not even quite sure. Personally, I'm not quite sure who's going to match up against those big slot tight ends or those big tight ends this year. Based on what, the personnel that has changed for the Giants in the secondary. But I will say this, Nick, I do get the feeling that just being a fan of this team, this is totally just based on memory, or not even memory, just based on feel, I guess. When they win that first game of the season, the Giants, it just somehow mentally has such a different impact on their season. Like last year, blown out 40-0 at home with a lot of hype. And then the season, basically felt like it spiraled from there. And the year before, complete upset against the Titans. No one expected them to win on the road. They win in a crazy fashion by going for a 2-point conversion, and then the guy misses the field goal at the end. Like that, I feel like sparked them toward that 7-2 start that they had in 2022. I feel like that makes a big difference. So for me, I'm really excited to get, I don't want to call it a winnable matchup, but it is a winnable matchup against the Vikings. The Vikings found a way to win football games last year despite a bad quarterback situation, somewhat similar to the Giants, I would say, with the exception of maybe they won a few more games than the Giants because their O-line was intact and playing decent football, pretty good football, and they had Justin Jefferson on the field. Now we hope the Giants O-line can mimic at least what the Vikings were able to provide last year for their offensive line, and then maybe Malik Neighbors is a Justin Jefferson-esque type weapon. We don't know. But I believe that these teams are very, not evenly matched up, but close. And the home advantage might help here. I think this is a very winnable game for the Giants.
I want to see Dexter Lawrence, baby, against Garrett Bradbury. I want to see Dexter Lawrence against that interior offensive line. Let's see what he has again for the 3rd time in what now?
Right. It's only like a year. Like it'll only be like what?
2, less than 2.
Yeah, it'll be like
Jesus.
16 to 18 months removed from the time where the Giants literally dominated the Vikings. I want to say dominated, but beat up the Vikings in the playoffs. And different system for the Vikings now. Obviously, Donatel's gone. That was a big difference. Different personnel. But I don't know if they have an answer for Dexter Lawrence. That's a great point by you. Garrett Bradbury, he's not a bad center, and he's been injured a little bit in his career, but he's an undersized center. He's not one of the bigger centers in the NFL. He's not like matching up against a Frank Ragnow. So I think Dexter Lawrence could really eat in this matchup and basically determine it. Again, I think we're looking at maybe like a 13-10 type of game for the Giants. Run the football. Don't put the ball in harm's way against Brian Flores. And maybe they can win this football game. It would be a great start. And then we go into week 2, Nick, and this is another interesting matchup. It's against a team the Giants have, quite frankly, had their way with over my period as a fan of this team. And for whatever reason, the Giants seem to always play their best football against Washington. Tyrod played great against them. Daniel Jones has had his best games ever against Washington. His 5-touchdown game as a rookie, one that was never repeated, but 5 touchdowns in a game is unbelievable to go back all the way to 2019. And I am not so sure that the hype that's surrounding Washington right now, Nick, is justified. I looked on sportsbooks. Their over-under is 6.5 with the money juiced toward the over, essentially saying like they're asking you to bet the under. I bet that. I put a decent amount on this. I do not think the Washington football team is going to win 7 games or more. And I'm not understanding the hype really surrounding them. I guess the assumption is Jaden Daniels makes a big boost for them. And the first-year coach thing could be real. But they're changing their system entirely on the defensive side of the ball. And they have a bunch of personnel they drafted last year and the year before that to fit that old system. Now they have to fit a new system. Yeah, Dan Quinn did a great job with the Cowboys, but Dan Quinn had a lot of talent on that defense with the Cowboys, including a Micah Parsons, none of which the Washington football has. They traded away their best edge last year, midseason, to the Bears. Again, I'm not so certain these secondary pieces fit. I still have major question marks about their offensive line, Nick, and their offensive line for rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Yes, they have good weapons. Yes, they have Cliff Kingsbury coming in. I don't know if that's an upgrade either, to be completely honest with you. I had a lot of respect for Scott Turner and the offense that they ran there, previously with that regime. I don't have much respect for Cliff Kingsbury, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. I know he gets another job somehow here, Nick, but I'm not so certain that he deserves this job. And I'm really curious how that even came to be. Like, I don't think he did a good job with Caleb Williams personally. The play calling there was weird and not great. And he did horribly with the Cardinals. So, and obviously with Mahomes, they only won 7 games at Texas Tech. So I have a lot of question marks against Washington. I know it's on the road. I think this is a very winnable game for the Giants.
Ever feel sluggish or out of focus? Are you stressed? Has your digestive system caused discomfort or flatulence like a certain co-host on this podcast during a live stream? If so, you should check out AG1. When I started drinking AG1 daily, I could feel a real difference in my daily health. I had more energy, I was better off at the gym, and I could focus on my work in a much more efficient manner. That's because AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health. Not only did I replace my multivitamin with AG1, but I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. I recommend AG1 to all my family and friends because AG1 has a team of doctors and scientists that formulate around the latest science and maintains high quality standards within the industry. Even my friends have started drinking AG1, and they always tell me how energetic they feel and how it's helped them out at the gym, and also it's helped them manage their stress levels. That's why we're happy to have AG1 as our partner. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. Go to drinkag1.com/banter. That's drinkag1.com/banter to check it out. Our mental and physical well-being is of the utmost importance. Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all need to take that very seriously. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Big Blue Banter podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New York, New Jersey, Arizona, if you will, or hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/banter to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/banter. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment. And before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, include EE system.
Yeah, it's a winnable game. I want to look at this a little bit more holistically. You start this season with possible rookie quarterback in JJ McCarthy and then Jaden Daniels. You could be starting the season as a defense against two rookie quarterbacks. And if you don't, it's against Sam Darnold. And I think Sam Darnold isn't going to be the Sam Darnold that we saw with Adam Gase and the New York Jets. I think he's going to be a little bit more prepared, a little bit more ready for what the Giants are going to throw at him. But I want to look at Shane Bowen. It usually takes couple weeks for a new defense to gel with the limited practice time professional athletes are offered right now or are required to have. So I think we can learn a lot about Shane Bowen early. And I can look at this situation and be like, this is a good thing. We're starting against non-veterans, people who are going to, the jitters are going to be going, that they're not used to playing professional football. Or we can look at it as our defense might not be ready and those quarterbacks might receive an easier opponent that's going to have like mental lapses possibly, and the defense won't be as gelled. And I'm not so certain which side of the fence I fall on there.
That's a great point. I probably fall, and I don't want to be sounding too overly optimistic, Nick, but I fall on the first side, the former side of the fence there, because I think the trenches are really going to make a difference in this game, especially against Washington. I think the Giants, by adding Brian Burns with Dexter, I mean, that game last year, I know they've made some changes personnel-wise, but those two Washington games, Dexter Lawrence, those were some of his most dominant games I've ever seen with the Giants. The first game against Nick Gates, that was almost like hard to watch for Nick Gates, to be completely honest with you. Nick Gates got absolutely manhandled. That was Mustipher level bad. Mustipher level difference, I thought, in film watching. It was not quite Mustipher, the Bears Mustipher game from 2 years ago, but it was damn close. He destroyed Nick Gates in that game. It was a little better for Washington in the second game, but I don't know if that personnel in the interior offensive line for them has really improved all that much with the new system as well. One that, quite frankly, I'm just going to repeat, I don't respect Cliff Kingsbury's system, so until I'm proven otherwise. So I feel very good about that matchup on the defense side of the ball. Offensively, maybe that's where you convince me. Look, the Giants have really struggled with Daniel Jones against Dan Quinn. It's just been a disaster, to be quite frank. Dan Quinn dominated him last year, 2 straight games. I believe Jones was in the second Cowboys game, right? He got injured in midway or something. It was that game.
Jones got injured against the Raiders.
Right. He got injured against the Raiders, but was he in the full Dallas second game? I feel like he wasn't. Oh, no, that was Tyrod the whole game.
Wasn't it DeVito?
That was a DeVito game. Wow.
Yeah.
The memory of last season is just fading so fast for me. I want to get out of my memory. That was a DeVito game. I remember we couldn't move the football very well in that game. But Dan Quinn, DeVito, Jones, whoever it may be, has really had his way. So I don't want to feel too confident offensively in that. But I could see another 17-13, 16-9 type of game here. And I'll tell you this, Nick, just to be quite frank, the Giants need to go 2-0 if they want to make the playoffs, in my opinion, against the schedule. When we get to the rest of the schedule and how difficult it's going to be, if the Giants want to make the playoffs this year and do what they did in 2022, which is surprise everyone, beat expectations, prove that this coaching staff is still really, really freaking good, and Joe Schoen has really improved the talent around the roster more than people project or expect right now, they have to win these 2 games. That's my stance on this.
Now, if they want to make the playoffs, yeah, I think they have to win any game they can. I don't think it has. So I think there's probably a chance where they can lose these 2 games and still make the playoffs, but that's very, very slim. I'm not even optimistic the Giants are going to make the playoffs, even if they win these 2 games. It's really, really hard to predict. Like Lamar Jackson could get injured, Baker Mayfield, anything can happen, right? Like right now, sitting here in May 16th, when we're recording this, it's very difficult to know exactly what's going to happen in week 3 of the NFL season, let alone, week 11, week 12, and Giants have a bye week 11, but the Giants do start the season with 2 games on the road in 3, and they go to the Cleveland Browns September 22nd. We going to see some Deshaun Watson in that game, or what's going on? That defense scares the shit out of me, Dan.
Well, that's the big thing right there. I mean, Deshaun Watson coming off a shoulder surgery, throwing shoulder surgery. I believe he's ahead of schedule, but I'm not quite certain on that. It's the second road game for the Giants in 3 weeks, second or third 1:00 game for the Giants, which I know some fans will love. That's going to be interesting to see where Deshaun's at, not only in his recovery, but if he can advance in this within this system, and I guess regain his confidence as a quarterback. I don't quite understand fully why Deshaun Watson is such a bad quarterback these days, but if you look at the numbers, Nick, and I haven't done too much of the film, but I did watch one game of film of him last year. He was god awful as a quarterback, and it's very odd to see how somebody who was so good with the Texans can be such a different quarterback. To me, it goes back to the sports psychology side of it. Like, is the confidence an issue there? But now there's another issue with Deshaun. It's that throwing shoulder. Is he going to? We've seen quarterbacks really not be the same post throwing shoulder. I personally feel like it ruined Cam Newton's career. Cam Newton before the throwing shoulder surgery and after was just a completely different quarterback. And that's not to say it's going to happen for all of them. I'm sure there's been some that have gotten better. Like Michael Penix, I know had 2 shoulder surgeries, can still rip a football. So it's not like a guarantee there. But yeah, the biggest factor here is another defense that gives the Giants problems. Cleveland Browns defense is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, we can negate Myles Garrett to an extent by having Andrew Thomas on the field, but they have a whole lot of talent in the rest of that front and really across the board, second and third levels there. So this is going to be a game the Giants really have to be careful with the football on the offensive side of the ball and try to win it on the defensive side of the ball.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we move on from there to the short week of the Dallas Cowboys, which I also hate, right? Like you go from a road game, 2 consecutive road games, and right into a short week before going on the road all the way to Seattle. To me, that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough part of the schedule. And I think you're right, man. Giants need to experience some early success. Whereas last year we looked at the schedule and we were like, yo, it is a murderous row. There are some winnable football games, even for a team like the New York Giants here early on, but the schedule from a traveling perspective does not do them any justice.
No, not at all. And I'll say this on that front, Nick, the Giants are one of only a few teams that have 2 Thursday games this year, which means short rest on both of those. So they're in a little bit of a difficult spot there. And that's obviously Dallas at home, night game, Thursday night. Like, it's going to be an interesting game considering last year against this matchup on night, the Giants really struggled, but we'll see. I feel like Dallas, was the one team in the NFC East I wasn't convinced took a step forward this offseason. I could even argue potentially took a step back, losing Tyron Smith, drafting a lot of players who in my mind might need development, specifically Tyler Guyton, their first round pick. So potentially also the loss of Dan Quinn could hurt them defensively. So I think there's a little bit of hope here. If the Giants can get some momentum going, go 2-0, 2-1, or I'm sorry, 3-0 or 2-1 in those first 3, maybe they could steal this one.
It's the Mike Zimmer hiring that kind of scares me, though, man. Like, I have a lot of respect for Mike Zimmer, and he's a very good coordinator. And those AA gap blitzes with Micah Parsons being wherever the hell he wants is just going to make a lot of whoever's playing quarterback for the New York Giants just crap themselves.
Especially considering JMS and pass pro last year was considerably, fair to say, a disappointment, though. Didn't play next to a lot of help at left guard and right guard. So we're hoping that can help improve with Runyon next to him on either side. We don't know for sure yet. Next game after that, it's finally going to a late window. We're going to get the Seattle Seahawks here in Seattle, a very, very tough place to play. I feel like 2 of these games on the schedule would be a lot less difficult if they were on flip, like Seattle at home versus away, and then Pittsburgh at home versus away. But it is what it is. Seattle in a weird spot, I feel like, as a franchise. Changing coach. Mike McDonald now at this point have 4 games to get his system in place. You talked about how there will, sometimes be communication errors and lapses in the secondary with the new system. That could be ironed out for Seattle by this point. Not certain. Leonard Williams re-signed to this team. Maybe Geno Smith is playing. Maybe Sam Howell is playing. I've heard some weird murmurs that they like Howell a lot, and they're not souring on Geno, but Geno's got to play more like the 2022 version than the 2023 version.
Geno's getting up there too.
He's getting up there in age as well. So this is an interesting matchup. I don't think this is a totally unwinnable game. The Giants should have won their 2022 game against the Seahawks. They obviously had those 2 fumbles by Richie James that really kind of turned the football game on special teams there. But to me, this is not an unwinnable game either. This is a game that the Giants can potentially upset.
Yeah, I think it has upset written on it, but it's difficult to win up in Seattle. So
it's
going to be one of those things where we're going to have to wait and obviously see, but anything can happen at that point. It's not like the Seattle Seahawks have a star-studded roster.
No, by any means. And a new coach. Then they come home for a home night game. No bye until week 11. The home night game against the Bengals. By this point, we are going to assume, and he already looks pretty good throwing the football, that Joe Burrow is fully back from his injury. They did lose their offensive coordinator. That could maybe have an impact on them this year. We'll see if that does or doesn't. But the Bengals have a lot of talent, man. Even just adding like Jermaine Burton in day 2, I love that ad for them. And that's not even their first ad in the draft. Like they had multiple players I love. Mims, I thought was an amazing pick for them. Their first 2 picks to me were just classic Bengal picks. They just trench you out and just hit guys that, in my opinion, are athletic, projection-based picks, and they tend to hit a lot on these projections. So I love this Bengals roster. I think Joe Burrow is a phenomenal quarterback. This matches up really poorly for the Giants. Now, Lou Anarumo's system has had some lapses in it, but, I think you got to be a certain level caliber quarterback to beat that type of defense, and I'm not certain the Giants are going to have that for that game. So this one, to me, does not feel very winnable.
Dan, you want to know what the Bengals offensive coordinator's name is?
Their new OC? I don't know, actually.
Dan Pitcher.
Dan Pitcher. Nice. That's perfect. Picture or pitcher?
It's actually Pitcher. Yeah.
All right. Nice. There we go. So now we're hitting a little bit of a rough patch as we head toward the bye week. It's the Eagles after that at home. Now, I'll say this. The Giants beat the Eagles the last time they played the Eagles, but a lot of things were different. First of all, Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback, and he hit a 70-yard bomb to Darius Slayton for a touchdown. 80-yard bomb. We haven't had a bomb touchdown from Daniel Jones like that in a long time, and we haven't had a bomb touchdown like that from Drew Lock ever. Not to say he can't do it, but we don't know for sure, and that changed that entire game. But the Giants did kind of blow that game out, too. They played really well defensively, and they've had a lot of success as of late defensively against Jalen Hurts now. Has the NFL figured out Hurts, or was it just a weird end to the season for the Eagles? That's the question we'll be asking ourselves now. We will know probably by this point. It's midway through the season, Nick, but they did lose Jason Kelce. It's not a nothing. Jason Kelce put in a new center. I know they're grooming him, Juergens, but guess what? Dexter Lawrence is now your matchup for this game. Good luck against Dexter Lawrence. So I don't think this is as unwinnable as I even did going into last year's matchups with the Eagles, mostly because I feel like the Eagles are in a weird spot for me. And I need to be proven. I guess for me as an analyst, Nick, I need to be proven that that what the teams did to stop Jalen Hurts last year isn't going to continue, because it's the same thing with Daniel Jones, right? I need to be proven the same way that you can't just simply say, we're not going to give you the B gap and you're going to have to find a new way to beat us. And you really can't beat us because you don't really use the middle of the field as a thrower. And when we force you off your spot to the right, rolling, it limits you and it cuts off half the field. And that's essentially what they did to Hurts. It's what they did to Jones, what they did to Justin Fields. And I need to be proven personally that Hurts is going to get back there. He probably will, Nick, and I'll probably be proven wrong early, but I weirdly find this game winnable.
Yeah, I think any game is winnable at any point if the Giants get hot. So that's kind of where I'm at. But
maybe
the Eagles, maybe is probably the best way. Like the Bengals doesn't look good, but if Joe Burrow gets hurt, which he's done several times in his career, it's something that could happen, right? So True. I look at the Eagles and I'm still a little bit scared of him. We're definitely the younger brother in the division in terms of talent, which I hate to freaking say, but historically, obviously the Giants are the big brother. But I think the Giants could realistically come away with a win, as they did at the end of the season, which was a game that the Eagles were trying to win. It's not like they were forfeiting that game. But moving on to Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. That's going to be a tough place, going to be a rowdy place. Primetime television. Giants in recent memory have not been great in primetime television. Can the Giants come away with the dub here?
On paper, yeah, they should be able to come away with a dub here potentially, or at least be in the mix. But this is a tough matchup when you go to Heinz on the road. It's not easy. That's why this is one of those games like Seattle where I just wish it was flipped, and I wish we could have, instead of getting the Bucs at home, I'll take the Bucs on the road any day, for example. Though that's different division, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like there are a lot of home games on here I could care less about playing at home. The Colts, the Bucs. The Saints are good to play at home. We got that one at least. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one, and it's going to be interesting to see because we assume Russell Wilson will start the quarterback season as quarterback of the Steelers, Nick. But this could be Justin Fields. And quite frankly, I'm hoping it is because the Giants have had a lot of success against Justin Fields. I think they know how to beat Justin Fields. And yes, it's a new coordinator, but I don't think the Giants are just going to throw out the tape that they've had on playing against Fields. They're probably going to look back and use some of those things and get aggressive. So that's how you have to play Fields in my mind. You got to get aggressive against him. You got to put guys on the line of scrimmage. You got to blitz him because he's not good against the blitz. He's better when he can sit back there and take his time. But when he has to make those decisions, get them sped up, that's when you beat the guy. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. I'm hoping personally that it's Justin Fields, despite the fact that I think he actually gives the Steelers a better chance to win.
I don't know, man. Justin Fields with Arthur Smith could be like really dangerous if they just run
Maybe.
the football. And now they have Najee. It's not Bijan Robinson, but you also brought in Cordero Patterson. I think Jalen Warren is a pretty damn good running back as well. So you're going to get a run-heavy approach.
True.
Giants, if they do face a Justin Fields-led Pittsburgh Steelers, need to stop the run and force Justin Fields to pass where they can set up those blitzes. And if they don't want to blitz, just allow those four to pin their ears back and go get Justin Fields while having someone else spy him and contain him, as Wink Martindale did very well in week 4 of the 2022 season against the Chicago Bears.
Good point. And I'll say this, Nick, one final thought on that. I'm hoping by this point, we're mid-season at this point, that Shane Bowen's run defense is going to be a big part of why we're successful at this point. And that'll help in this time matchup. Then we come back home, Washington, obviously an early game because nobody wants to watch that Giants-Washington game anything but the 1 p.m. slate. And again, we talked about this matchup earlier, but now we have Jaden Daniels with a little bit more seasoning here, obviously. Though, remember what we said during the pre-draft process, Nick. Jaden Daniels is going to have to be an outlier if he wants to stay healthy in the NFL and play in the NFL. There's a non-zero chance that it could be Mariota at this point for injury purposes. It's not impossible. And I'll tell you what, if it's Mariota, I feel great. I don't really understand the Mariota signing by them. I thought it was a terrible move. I thought they should have kept Sam Howell, but I know there's dynamics there because Howell would have expected to hope to start. From what I've seen from Mariota, specifically the Atlanta version, it was one of the worst quarterbacks I watched on film in the last probably 5 years of watching football. As far as, not just the pure idiot backups go, like the guys who just shouldn't be in the NFL.
Jake Fromm's.
Yeah, the Fromm's. Like
could be
he just missed target after target after target.
Sam Hartman, baby.
Could be Sam Hartman's on that roster as well.
Jeff Driscoll.
Yeah, it's possible. But this is, a potential pivot game for the Giants. If they're starting the season hotter than we expected and they're making a run like they did in 2022, this will be a must-win game at that point. You got to sweep the Commanders to make the playoffs, in my mind, just based on the rest of the schedule. So it'll be an interesting one. And then we go to Germany. Germany against Bryce Young and the Panthers, a team that, the Giants, I'll tell you this stat, Nick, because we haven't done this one yet. It's a funny one from Doug Analytics, but the Giants have a projected win total of 6.5, Nick, by Vegas, and they're favored in just 3 games this year. The Vikings game to start the season, because they're at home, I believe. One of the Washington games, the home game. And then that Carolina game in Germany. And they're favored. They're underdogs in all 7 games after the bye. Their biggest favor is over 1.5 against Washington. They're favored by 1.5 against Washington. I guess that's probably that week, that home game, the one we just did. But then they're favored against the Panthers. So probably a 1 or 1.5 type of thing there. But Germany, overseas, Panthers, what are your thoughts on this game?
I've been saying for, I feel like, years now, I'm like, yo, what's going to happen when Bryce Young is standing in the back of the pocket and Dexter Lawrence hits him and falls on him? Because Bryce Young is so damn small. We might get to see that now, right? Like, I think the Giants should win this game, but it's difficult because you're in Germany and it throws off your entire routine. And that could pose as a liability for the better team. And on paper, I think the New York Giants are probably the better team than the Carolina Panthers, depending on the development of Bryce Young.
Brian Burns' revenge game here, potentially, for we could get a sack and a half, 2 sacks here. I'll be interested to see what he can do in this game. I think this is a winnable game. And I'll say this, Nick, as we head to the bye. The Giants, in my mind, have to be 6-3 going into the bye at minimum. 5-4 might get away with it if they could be, if they're a better team than we think, and Jones takes this huge jump as a quarterback, or Drew Lock plays and he looks great for some reason and no one expected it, but he's in Dable's system and it clicks for him. Because if they're not playing great football or they're not one of the great teams, they're going to get a real murderer's row after this bye week. So I'm looking to go into this thing 6-3. I don't think it's totally undoable. If they start 2-0, you just have to steal a few games. An Eagles game here, a Seahawks, the Panthers and Washington for sure. If they win those 2 games, the 2 before the bye and the 2 to start the season, that's 4. They just need to win 2 of the other remaining 8, or 2 of the other remaining 5. In that scenario. And I think it's doable to go 2-3 in the rest of those and get to 6-3 in the bye. Not saying it's going to happen. That's not going to be my prediction per se, but I think it's something that the Giants have to do if they want to make the playoffs this year. It's a must because we come out of the bye.
Coming out of the bye, man, you have 3 games at home out of 4. So it goes the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then they're on the road Thanksgiving at Dallas Cowboys. And then you have 2 home games against the Saints at 1:00 and then the Baltimore Ravens at 1:00. And then week 16 is a road game in a dome, Atlanta Falcons. Week 17, a home game against the Colts. And then the road game to finish the season, week 18 against the Philadelphia Eagles. There are some big hitters in there, the Baltimore Ravens, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Dallas Cowboys. 2 of them are within the division. But the Saints, we're not 100% certain what Derek Carr is going to be like, what the Saints are going to be like. Is Spencer Rattler going to be the starting quarterback?
The Bucs, to me, are a better team than people realize.
The Bucs are a much better team than people probably want to give them credit. But I don't think I think it's a game that the Giants could still realistically compete, specifically at home. And it could be a cold weather game, November 24th,
True.
against a team that is Florida based.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of if the Giants are a better team than we expect, that's a very winnable game. If the Giants are just a team that is getting by or kind of making a little bit better, beating expectations, that Bucks game is going to be tough because I really like what the Bucks have done on the trenches and both sides of the ball.
Different
And
offensive coordinator now, though.
that hurt. That could hurt them. That could definitely hurt
Liam
them.
Cohn, which is funny, but it's not Dave
yeah.
Canales, who is now with the Carolina Panthers.
Right.
So I could throw some things off for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield's still the starting quarterback, which we would imagine after he signed that contract, and they don't really have any other options. I think they have. Oh my God! Just check their depth chart. Zach Annexstad is on their roster. That's crazy. Zach Annexstad went to the University of Minnesota when I was covering them for Yahoo Sports, and he was one of the first quarterbacks that I ever covered professionally. Zach Annexstad before Morgan took over there. I don't know. That's a little Nick Filato sidebar, but that's interesting. I did not think he would be on.
How is he still on the roster now? It must have been.
He's probably going to be a cut and put on the practice squad. He was a UDFA, but that's good for him. He was highly recruited, man. Minnesota
too right now. Is it still Trask?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting. They say they like Trask behind the scenes, so who knows? I mean, they've been grooming him for a while there, but yeah, I maybe this isn't as hard as it seemed to me on first glance, but I don't know, man. I think the Falcons could be a really good football team this year, and they're a tough team to beat on the road. And then I think ultimately, you just have so many of these division games on Ravens, but it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Those last games, the Giants are not favored in any of those last games after the bye. Those last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 games. So we'll see how it goes.
Nor should they be really.
Right now, going into it.
Yeah, right now, exactly.
I do feel more optimistic than the general consensus does about the Giants. I feel like they've made major strides to improve this roster, specifically adding 2 stars that they didn't have last year in Burns and Neighbors. Now you could say they lost 2 stars, quote unquote, in Barkley and McKinney. Barkley, I don't know if what he gave them was star last year. Personally, I don't believe it was. And I don't know if a running back really ever can unless it's McCaffrey level, and you still need an O-line at that point. And then McKinney is just off the ball a lot. Like, he just wasn't around the ball and didn't really have that good of a first half of the season. I think Burns and Neighbors will be impact players day one, week in, week out with consistency. In addition to hopefully the offensive line upgrade, that remains to be seen. That's more wishful thinking, pie in the sky. But Nick, that's our schedule analysis. We're going to break it down like we did. More coming on the Big Blue Banter podcast. Later next week, we're going to have an interview with PFF Sam Monson. Hope I got that name right. I'm going to confirm that with him. He's Irish, so hopefully I got it right. But we're going to break down everything, off-season draft. So
you should do an Irish accent for it too, bud.
Oh, I'm never going to. To him, that would be so disrespectful. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.